Hello, my most amazing artists. Today we're going to be drawing Pete the cat. To draw Pete the cat, we have a few steps that we're going to follow. So there will be a guide that shows you exactly how you can do those steps. But I'm going to practice first. It's always a good idea to practice before we draw something with permanent ink. So I can either practice in my sketchbook on a blank page by opening it up to a white page, or I can practice on a whiteboard. If you don't have a whiteboard, use just a piece of paper or your sketchbook if you have one of those. But I'm going to practice on my whiteboard. Now, when I'm practicing, I'm going to hold my whiteboard or my sketchbook or paper. I'm going to hold it horizontally. That's the long ways side to side. I'm not going to hold it vertically. That means I wouldn't have enough room. So I'm holding it just like this drawing guide here so I can make sure I draw him really big. So I'm going to start with step number 1. You can go ahead and practice along with me while I'm practicing on my whiteboard. I would use a pencil to start out with so that you can erase if you're using a piece of paper. I'm using my whiteboard to practice so I can erase too. So I start out by making 2 vertical lines on either side of my paper. I'm spreading them very far apart. Go ahead and make yours. Then I make 2 diagonal lines. Diagonal goes across. So I'm making 2 diagonal lines that intersect at the bottom for his chinny chin chin. Then I'm going to make another diagonal line that goes down from the top. That's going to make ears. Now I'm going to connect those 2 lines with an arch like a rainbow. That's going to make the top of the head. Now I'm making a letter V near the bottom of the head. That's going to be the nose. So I go ahead and make the top of it kind of looks like a triangle. After I'm done with that, I'm going to make 2 dots above the nose. Now, I'm going to make 2 more dots. Those first 2 dots I drew were not his eyes. I'm making 4 total dots to help guide me to make Pete's eyes because the cat eyes are a certain shape and they're really big. So now I connect my dots with 2 rainbow lines. If I make a mistake, it's okay because this is just practice and I'm able to erase it. Hopefully you are too. So I make those 2 rainbow lines, I connect them, and then I connect the bottom. And connect the bottom with those arches. So now I've got the shape of the eyes. I'm going to put a letter U inside of the eye. Go ahead and put a letter U inside both of your eyes. Now I'm going to do it again. I thicken it by making another letter U. That's going to make the eyes look a little bit more realistic like Pete the cat's and show a little bit of a highlight in the eye. Now I'm going to add his body. If you don't have room for the body, that's okay. That means you drew big. That's awesome. Now I add whiskers on. I'm going to do a few on each side. Now my Pete is all done. I've definitely had enough practice, but if you would like to keep practicing, maybe you drew a little too small, definitely try again and practice. It's always a good idea to practice before you do anything with permanent marker. In this case, I'm going to be using ink. If you don't have ink, you could use a Sharpie. Practice first with something that you can erase, so that way you get the hang of doing these few steps before you do it on your big paper, especially with those rainbow lines. They require a little bit of practice if you haven't done them before. Eyes are a little bit different than just making dots. These are the cat eyes. Now whiskers and details. So if I've had enough practice, I can put away my whiteboard or my scrap paper or my sketchbook, and now I can get out my permanent ink and a new piece of paper. When I get out that new piece of paper, I'm going to make sure I write my name and my class code if you're in class with me with lots of other students. If you're at home, it's always a good idea to write your name too, just so you always know who made that art. So I'm going to take my pencil and write my name and class code in the bottom corner. Then I'm going to use an ink marker. If you don't have an ink marker, then a Sharpie or a black marker works just fine. I'm going to be using the ink marker in class, but if you don't have one at home, absolutely use a black marker or a Sharpie permanent marker. That would be great. If you're using an ink bottle, you can twist off the cap, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, roll up your sleeves, and test it on a tester paper. The reason we test it is because sometimes they need to wake up. Wake up, ink bottle. Uh-oh, but if I test it too much and I press down, it might start to drip. That's too much ink. So I want to make sure I'm just touching it light like a feather. Oh, if I squeeze the bottle, it's going to make an even bigger mess. Oh no, if I were to pick up that paper, look what happens. Oh, that's permanent ink and could make a huge mess if I were to pick it up. So if that happens to you, I'm going to set it on your table and let it dry. Do not pick it up. In this case, I was glad I had a practice paper, just so I can get the idea of that I don't squeeze down, I don't press hard. You don't have to squeeze your marker or press down really hard for a regular marker or pencil to work, so don't do it with the ink marker. I'm writing my name with a pencil, not with the ink. Same thing if you're using a marker or Sharpie, you could write it with a pencil and then get started with your Sharpie. If you are using an ink marker, make sure that you're touching light like a feather as you're drawing. That's going to be very important so we don't have any ink messes. If you're using Sharpie, it's also a good idea. You never want to press too hard with your marker because then that could ruin the marker's tip. Now, you're going to draw very big. That's the most important part. Draw big, big, big today. We want to leave lots of room inside, just doing lines like a coloring book. Just the outlines. Go ahead and make 2 vertical lines on either sides of your paper, 2 vertical lines now. Then connect those 2 vertical lines with 2 diagonal lines at the bottom. That's going to make that chin again. Now make 2 more diagonal lines, making the ears. I make 2 diagonal lines at the top, just like I did at the bottom. That's going to be the ears. Now make that rainbow arch to connect your ears to be the top of the head. Now I'm ghost drawing with my finger to make that letter V. It's always a good idea to ghost draw with your finger or practice drawing first before you do it so you get the idea of where you're going to draw because you can't erase the ink. I'm also making sure that I'm not wiping my hand or my sleeve in there. I'm working very lightly on top of my paper. Now I make those 2 dots. And then 2 more dots. Go ahead and make your dots. Make sure they're pretty far apart. That way you can go whoop and connect them. Do the same on the other side. Whoop and connect them again. Now he looks like he's smiling with his eyes closed. But I'm going to connect these to make these open eyes. Whoop. Except this time the arch goes up. If you make a mistake with a permanent marker or ink, just turn it into a happy accident. It's okay. We're not going to waste trees by getting a new paper or starting over. It takes practice. Now I'm making that letter U inside the eye and another letter U again to make it a little bit more colored in and show a highlight of the eye. He's looking so cute. Now I'm going to draw the body by making 2 lines near the bottom of the paper. That's going to be his body. Now I'm making a few whiskers on both sides. Pete the cat has very long whiskers. You could make yours even longer than I did. Now I think I'm all done. My Pete the cat is big, takes up most of my paper. I made sure that I kept my paper down the whole time so that I didn't move my ink bottle. Now if you use Sharpie, and same thing with the ink, be careful because if you press down too hard underneath your paper, it might bleed through to your table. That's why I'm going to leave this here to dry. I'm going to use some hand sanitizer on my hands because whenever I get black ink on my hands, whether it's Sharpie or an ink bottle, I can just rub some sanitizer on there and it should work to get off most of that black ink. Then I'm going to let it dry on my table. I'm going to come back to this next week to add some details. But for now, you did an awesome job drawing Pete the cat with me. Hope you had fun.